Hey, hey, stories of the Soul fam. We've got a swoon-worthy love story for you today. Let's jump in and tell us the city never truly slept. From the penthouse of the Rafford Tower, the hum of Manhattan rose like a symphony of ambition. Horns blaring, sirens wailing, deals closing in the shadows of skyscrapers. But 48 floors above the chaos, Peter Rafford stood utterly still, staring out of a wall of glass that made his empire feel both infinite and suffocating. A billionaire. A visionary, a man whose name alone could make investors salivate and competitors grind their teeth. Peter Rafford had built his fortune in tech. His cybersecurity empire was the skeleton key that locked or unlocked entire governments, corporations, and billionaires even wealthier than himself. The magazines called him the Oracle of Security. The tabloids called him the Ice King, and the lonely reflection in the glass called him hollow. He took a sip of his black coffee. No sugar, no cream. He liked things stripped bare of pretense, unadorned. But the bitterness lingered on his tongue, much like the bitterness in his life. "Sir," came a soft voice behind him. Peter turned slightly. Mirabelle stood at the edge of the room. His maid, always quiet, always respectful, as if afraid to disturb the polished silence of the penthouse. Her uniform was neatly pressed, her brown hair tied back in a bun, and her eyes fixed on the floor. "The car is ready," she said softly. Peter nodded. "Thank you, Mirabelle." She bowed her head and slipped away as soundlessly as she came. The door clicked shut, leaving him alone again with the skyline. Alone was familiar. It was also suffocating. His phone buzzed on the glass table beside him. He picked it up. A message from Lana, his girlfriend of 2 years. "Miss you, babe. Just landed in Dubai. Wait until you see what I bought." Peter exhaled sharply through his nose, not quite a laugh, not quite a sigh. Lana, the socialite. Blonde, stunning, the envy of every man at the galas they attended. She knew the best angles for photographs, the most exclusive clubs, the most expensive restaurants, and she knew the price tag of everything. When they first met, he had been drawn in by her sparkle. She was bold where he was guarded, vivacious where he was reserved, but over time the sparkle dimmed, replaced by the cold glint of transactions. She loved the lifestyle more than the man. Her affection was directly proportional to the number of zeros on the gifts he bought her. His thumb hovered over the keyboard, then he put the phone down without replying. A soft knock. "Come in," he said. Stella, his personal assistant, stepped in briskly, a tablet in hand. She was tall, sharp in her navy dress, hair cut in a sleek bob. Stella was efficient, ambitious, and utterly reliable. She never forgot a detail, never dropped the ball. "Morning, Peter. I have your briefing here." She tapped the tablet, her voice professional, but laced with energy. "Not now, Stella." She blinked. "Not now?" "Clear my schedule for the week." Her brows furrowed. "Everything? You have everything," he said firmly. "Reschedule? Cancel, I don't care." She hesitated. "Even Lana's dinner?" "Especially Lana's dinner." For a moment Stella looked at him like she wanted to protest, to ask why. But then she nodded curtly. "Of course." She turned on her heel, heels clicking against marble, and vanished as quickly as she came. Peter leaned back against the sofa, staring at the ceiling. Stella was good, too good. Sometimes he wondered if she worked for him because she admired him, or because she wanted to become him. He once overheard her at a gala, whispering to a friend over champagne, "If I play my cards right, I could become Mrs. Rafford." The memory still left a sour taste in his mouth. The penthouse was silent again. Peter poured himself a glass of scotch even though it was barely noon. The amber liquid burned his throat, but it didn't fill the hollow in his chest. He walked into his study, the only room in the house that felt truly his. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined the walls, not the kind filled by designers for aesthetic, but books actually read and worn. Philosophy, psychology, literature, law. On his desk sat a framed photograph of his parents, long gone. His mother's voice came back to him, echoing from memory. "Marry a woman who builds, not just one who shines. Gold can be polished, Peter, But foundations must be strong. He touched the glass of the photo frame, his jaw tightening. He had everything, yet nothing. Billions, yet no one he trusted. His empire was built on knowing where others were vulnerable. But his own weakness? Trust. Love. What good was an empire if every smile around him was rented? Peter sat heavily at the desk, tapping a pen against a notepad. 3 names scrawled in his tight handwriting: Lana, Stella, Mirabelle, his girlfriend, his assistant, his maid. 3 women, 3 roles in his life. And yet, none had shown him true proof of loyalty. Lana's love was gilded. Stella's loyalty was professional ambition. Mirabelle's humility was puzzling. Once he overheard her on the phone, quietly whispering in Spanish in the kitchen. Something about her mother's surgery. He had stepped in, offered to pay. She refused. "It's not your responsibility, sir. I'll manage." Who refuses free money when their loved one is sick? That single act had lodged in his mind like a thorn. Peter leaned back, the pen tapping faster. What if he could see their truth? Not through words, but through choices. He picked up his phone. "James," he said when his head of security answered, "I need you to arrange something." Quietly, "Yes, sir?" "I'm giving 3 women in my life unlimited credit cards. I want you to track every purchase, every move. No invasion of privacy beyond that. Just patterns, behavior, choices." There was a pause. "All 3 women closest to you?" "Yes." "May I ask why?" Peter swirled the scotch in his glass, eyes fixed on the skyline. "Because I'm tired of actors. I want to see who they are when the mask drops." "Understood, sir. I'll make the arrangements." He hung up and stared at his reflection in the window. A billionaire. A man who could buy countries. Yet tonight, he felt like a beggar. Begging for honesty. Begging for something real. "Not for long," he whispered to himself. Hours later, Peter sat in his study long past midnight. A single brass desk lamp cast golden light over the room, shadows stretching across the walls. The city glittered below like fallen stars. On the desk in front of him lay 3 velvet envelopes. Each one held a sleek, black, unmarked credit card. No limits, no restrictions, just freedom. Each envelope had a name written in silver ink. Peter stared at them for a long time, as if they might speak. What would they choose when the mask was off? Vanity, power, or something else entirely? He took a deep breath and leaned back, the leather chair creaking under him. This was not a game, not a trick, not some cruel test. This was survival, his heart's survival. Somewhere, deep down, he still believed in his mother's words, that there could be someone who would build, not just shine. But tomorrow, the test would begin, and by the end of it, Peter Rafford would know whether his billions had bought him nothing but emptiness, or led him to the one truth he had been searching for his entire life. The morning sun shimmered like molten gold across the helipad atop Rafford Tower. A sleek black SUV pulled up, and out stepped Lana. Her platinum blonde hair cascaded like a waterfall of silk, shimmering in the sunlight. She wore a white designer jumpsuit that hugged her curves, paired with heels so tall they clicked like gunshots against the pavement. Every step screamed confidence, entitlement, allure. "Babe!" she exclaimed, flinging her arms around Peter's neck. She pressed a kiss against his cheek. Her perfume, a heady mix of jasmine and expensive liquor, wrapping around him. "Finally, you've been so distant." Peter allowed a smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "You've been busy with your trip." She pouted, tilting her head with theatrical disappointment. "You didn't even comment on my new bag." He glanced at the crocodile skin purse slung over her shoulder. Gold clasps, pristine white leather. Easy 5 figures. "It's nice," he said flatly. Her pout vanished as quickly as it appeared when she noticed the envelope he was holding. "What's this?" "A gift," he said simply, handing it over. She tore it open, her perfectly manicured nails flashing. Her eyes widened at the sleek black card gleaming inside. "Oh, my God. Peter, are you serious?" 3 days, no rules. Spend however you like." Her lips parted, disbelief giving way to gleeful laughter. This is exactly what I needed. She twirled on the spot, holding the card aloft like a trophy. I'll make you proud, babe. Just watch. I'm sure you will, Peter murmured, watching as she hurried back toward the SUV, already on her phone. The moment the door closed behind her, her voice rose in excitement. Girls, you won't believe what my man just did. Black card, no limit. Forget Dubai, we're about to own New York this weekend. The SUV roared away, leaving Peter standing alone on the helipad, the skyline stretching endlessly behind him. By mid-afternoon, James, his head of security, sent the first report. Peter sat in his study, scotch glass in hand, staring at the live updates scrolling across the tablet. Location, 5th Avenue. Transaction, 42,750. Hermes. Minutes later, location, Madison Avenue. Transaction, $67,300. Cartier. Then, location, Soho. Transaction, $19,850. Gucci. Peter set the glass down, his jaw tightening. He wasn't surprised, not really, but watching the numbers climb felt like watching a slow-motion car crash. Lana floated through the boutiques like a queen inspecting her kingdom. The staff practically bowed when she walked in, her card flashing like a sword of power. At Hermes, she tried on scarf after scarf, rejecting them until a sales associate whispered, "This one was reserved for a celebrity. But for you, madam, exceptions can be made." Lana bought 6. At Cartier, she insisted on trying on every diamond bracelet in the store, laughing with her friends as they snapped selfies. "Which looks better? The one worth your apartment or the one worth your tuition?" she teased one of them. At Gucci, she didn't even look at the price tags. Shoes, dresses, bags, all piled up like spoils of war. And all the while, she posted on Instagram stories. Were blessed Sabri love my life or were spoiled. Her followers gushed, envied, worshipped. But Peter, watching from his penthouse, felt something colder than envy. He felt confirmation. That evening, Lana swept into a Michelin-starred restaurant with her entourage. The maitre d' bowed so low it looked like his spine might snap. She ordered bottles of wine worth thousands, dishes she barely touched, and tipped extravagantly, not from kindness, but for show. Her friends clapped and squealed like children at Christmas. Halfway through, she FaceTimed Peter, her screen filled with glittering chandeliers and champagne glasses. "Babe, look at us living our best lives. You're amazing, do you know that?" Peter stared at her through the screen, her laughter echoing in his ear. "As long as you're happy," he said evenly. "I'm so happy," she beamed, before turning the camera toward her friends, who chorused, "Thank you, Peter." He ended the call before she noticed his silence. By the second morning, Lana's spree had escalated. Location, Rolls-Royce dealership. Transaction, $480,000. Location, Sotheby's auction. Transaction, $200,000. Rare diamond earrings. Peter's fingers tightened around the glass tablet. His knuckles whitened. This wasn't spending. This was conquest. Lana wasn't buying luxuries. She was staking territory, marking herself as untouchable, as the woman who could have anything. That evening, she returned to the penthouse, glowing with triumph. "Peter, baby," she purred, throwing her arms around him. "You won't believe the deals I got today." "Deals?" he asked flatly. "Investments," she corrected quickly. "Luxury cars, rare jewelry. They only go up in value. I did this for us." Peter studied her face. Her eyes shone, but not with love, with victory, with greed disguised as ambition. "For us?" he repeated quietly. "Yes, baby, for us." She kissed him deeply, her diamond-studded fingers tangling in his hair. But as her lips pressed against his, Peter's mind whispered a different truth. "Not for us. For you." By the final day, the numbers had soared into the millions. Lana's social media was ablaze. New cars, new jewels, private yacht parties. Her followers called her Haja Goals. Peter watched it all in silence. That night, Lana strutted into the penthouse, draped in diamonds and carrying shopping bags. "Babe, this weekend was life-changing. We should do this more often." Peter set his glass down carefully. "Did you enjoy yourself?" "Are you kidding? I've never felt more alive." She kissed him again, leaving a smear of lipstick on his cheek. "You've proven you're the only man who can keep up with me." Peter didn't respond. He simply looked at her, the weight of his mother's words pressing down on him. Gold can be polished, but foundations must be strong. Lana was pure gold, bright, shiny, enviable. But her foundation? Hollow. When she finally fell asleep, draped in silk sheets beside him, Peter lay awake, staring at the ceiling. His chest felt heavy, but not broken, because deep down, he had known all along. Lana was never truly his. She belonged to the sparkle, the spotlight, the endless hunger of vanity. And as much as it hurt, it was also liberating. Because now, he had proof, and 2 more envelopes to deliver. Peter sat in his office the next morning, staring out at the city skyline through the floor-to-ceiling windows. His thoughts were heavier than usual. Lana's betrayal lingered in his mind like a sour taste he couldn't spit out. The image of her blowing thousands on vanity purchases, while showing not a shred of thought for his trust, made him feel small, almost foolish. But this was only the first test. The second would reveal just as much, maybe more. Across the hall, Stella, his longtime personal assistant, was typing furiously on her laptop, answering emails with the efficiency of a machine. Stella had worked for him for nearly 6 years. She was polished, smart, and always dressed in chic business attire that spoke of someone who wanted to climb the corporate ladder. Peter had often admired her ambition, though sometimes it bordered on ruthless. She had once told him, "Dreams don't pay bills, Mr. Rafford. Hustle does." It was a sentiment that stuck with him. Stella was loyal, or so he believed, but her loyalty often seemed tied more to his power than his person. Today, that would be put to the test. "Stella," Peter called, his deep voice echoing across the polished office. She rose quickly, heels clicking against the marble floor as she entered. "Yes, Mr. Rafford?" He gestured for her to sit. "You've been by my side for years. You've handled every crisis, every schedule, every deal. You've earned my trust." Her eyes softened briefly before hardening again, as if she were afraid to let sentiment show. "Thank you, sir. You've given me opportunities most people only dream of." Peter leaned forward. "And now, I want to give you more. Consider this. A token of my gratitude." He slid a gleaming black credit card across the desk. "No limit. Use it as you see fit. One day. No restrictions." Stella blinked, her usual composure faltering. "Are you serious?" "Completely." He leaned back in his leather chair, watching carefully. "Think of it as a test. Show me who you are when the cage door is open." Stella picked up the card slowly, almost reverently. She turned it in her hand, her reflection glinting in the gold trim. "You trust me with this?" Peter nodded. "I do." A sharp smile crossed her lips. "Then I won't disappoint you." But Peter wasn't sure if her words reassured him or worried him. By midday, Stella was out on 5th Avenue, her posture confident and her stride purposeful. Unlike Lana, who had wandered boutiques like a child in a candy shop, Stella had a plan. Her first stop, an upscale law firm's office. Within the hour, she was signing retainer agreements, paying exorbitant fees in advance. Her reasoning was simple. With powerful lawyers at her disposal, she could secure her future, no matter what. Next, she visited a real estate agency. Instead of browsing luxury homes for herself, she bought stakes in prime commercial properties, cafes, office spaces, even a small boutique hotel. She wasn't wasting money. She was investing. By evening, Stella had spent millions. She sat in a rooftop bar, sipping champagne and reviewing documents. Everything she'd done that day screamed one thing: ambition. But the ambition wasn't tied to Peter. It was tied to herself. When she returned the next morning, she walked into Peter's office with a confidence that bordered on arrogance. She placed the card on his desk along with a folder of signed contracts. "I didn't buy handbags," she said crisply. "I bought power, lawyers, real estate, influence. With these moves, I'll never need to depend on anyone again, not even you." Her tone was sharp, almost triumphant. Peter studied her for a long moment. He saw the satisfaction in her eyes, the hunger that drove her. She hadn't betrayed him with frivolity like Lana had. Instead, she had betrayed him with calculation. He had hoped, deep down, that she might use the chance to show loyalty, to do something meaningful for others, or at least for the company they had built together. Instead, she had used his fortune to secure her independence, to free herself from him. "Impressive," he said finally, his voice neutral. "But also, telling." Stella tilted her chin. "I told you once, Mr. Rafford, dreams don't pay bills. Hustle does. I've hustled, and now I'll never be in anyone's shadow." Peter dismissed her with a quiet nod, but as she walked out, his chest tightened. Another thread of pride, another illusion of loyalty, had snapped. First Lana, now Stella. Both had revealed the same truth in different ways. When given the chance, they thought only of themselves. Peter's pride wavered. He had thought he was surrounded by loyalty, yet all he saw was self-interest. But there was still one more. The maid, Mirabelle. She was the one person he hadn't truly considered until now. The quiet soul in the background, unnoticed, underestimated. And deep inside, Peter wondered, would she fail him too? The mansion was unusually quiet that evening. After Stella left, Peter sat alone in his study, the weight of disappointment pressing down on him. His heart ached in ways money could not mend. Two women he had once trusted had shown him that loyalty could be bought, or worse, discarded. Lana with her vanity, Stella with her ambition. Both had chosen themselves over him. He swirled a glass of scotch in his hand and stared at the flickering fire in the marble hearth. Is everyone like this? He wondered. Am I truly nothing more than a wallet, a stepping stone? But then his gaze shifted through the glass doors, into the quiet kitchen. There, humming softly as she wiped down the counters, was Mirabelle, the maid. She was the one constant in his home, quiet, reliable, almost invisible. She never asked for more than her paycheck. She smiled when she greeted him, bowed politely when she served dinner, and always moved with gentle grace. Peter had never tested her because, what was there to test? She was a maid after all, but something deep inside urged him to complete the circle. The next morning, he approached her as she was polishing silverware. "Mirabelle," he said softly. She startled slightly, then quickly composed herself, setting down the fork she had been holding. "Yes, Mr. Rafford?" Peter studied her for a moment. She was modestly dressed in her uniform, hair tied back neatly, eyes lowered out of respect. She had none of Lana's glamour, none of Stella's sharp edge. And yet there was something steady about her presence. He placed the same black credit card on the table. "I've given this card to others," he explained, his voice heavy. "Now, I want you to have it, for one day. No restrictions." Her eyes widened. She shook her head instantly. "Oh no, sir. I couldn't possibly—" "I insist," Peter interrupted gently. "Think of it as an opportunity. Use it however you wish. Buy something for yourself, for your family, for anyone. Just show me who you are." Mirabelle hesitated, her hands trembling slightly. Then, slowly, she picked up the card, holding it as though it were made of fire. "Very well, sir," she whispered. "I'll do my best." That day Peter sent his driver to follow her, at a distance. He needed to see, to understand. Mirabelle's first stop wasn't a luxury boutique. It wasn't even a decent clothing store. Instead, she walked into a modest grocery market in the poorer district of the city. She filled carts with food, bags of rice, canned goods, vegetables, bread, milk, enough to feed dozens. When she reached the register, she swiped the card, her face red with embarrassment, as though ashamed of spending so much. Next, she visited a children's shoe store. She bought pairs in every size, from tiny sandals for toddlers to sturdy sneakers for teenagers. Then she entered a pharmacy. She filled prescriptions, not for herself, but for names on crumpled slips of paper she carried in her apron pocket. Finally, as the sun set, she walked into a dilapidated shelter on the edge of town. The building was worn down, its paint chipped, its rooms overcrowded. There she unloaded everything. Peter, sitting in his limousine across the street, watched in stunned silence as Mirabelle carried bag after bag inside. Children's faces lit up as she handed out shoes. Mothers wept quietly as they received milk and medicine. Old men bowed their heads in gratitude. And through it all, Mirabelle smiled. Not the forced smile of someone performing, but the radiant, quiet joy of someone giving without expectation. Late that night she returned to the mansion. She entered the study timidly, the card in her hand. "I'm sorry, sir," she said softly. "I didn't buy anything for myself. I know you wanted me to, but I couldn't. Not when I know so many people who need so much." Peter stood from his chair, his throat tight. He walked toward her slowly, each step heavy with realization. "You spent it all? On them?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She lowered her eyes. "They matter too, Mr. Rafford. I've seen mothers skip meals so their children could eat. Old men suffer because they can't afford medicine. I couldn't use your generosity for myself, not when it could give them hope." Peter's chest ached. For the first time in years, tears stung his eyes. He reached out, taking the card from her trembling hand. But instead of anger, disappointment, or mockery, he simply whispered, "Mirabelle, you've shown me more loyalty, more love than anyone else ever has." She looked up, startled. Their eyes met, and in that moment Peter felt his pride crumble, his walls shatter. This woman, humble and overlooked, had given him the one thing no amount of money could buy: truth. The fire crackled in the study as Peter sat in silence, Mirabelle standing nervously before him. She twisted her hands together, unsure whether she had disappointed him or not. Finally, Peter broke the silence. His voice was low, roughened with emotion. "You know, Mirabelle, I thought I was testing you, but it turns out you tested me." Her brows furrowed in confusion. "I don't understand, sir." Peter gave a humorless laugh. "All this wealth, all these walls, all these games, and still I couldn't see what really mattered. You didn't just spend money today. You showed me what I've been missing." He moved closer, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. She froze, wide-eyed. "You've humbled me, Mirabelle. You shattered my pride." His voice cracked. "I thought loyalty was about who stayed closest to the shine. But you chose to give without thinking of yourself. No one has ever done that for me." Her eyes softened, and for the first time she allowed herself to truly look at him. Not as her employer, not as the billionaire genius splashed across magazines, but as a man who was tired, lonely, and searching. The next morning, Peter made a decision. He summoned Lana first. She walked in wearing a glittering gown, dripping with diamonds she had bought using his card. She posed, expecting praise. "Beautiful, right?" she said. "This shows the world what it means to be with you." Peter's face was unreadable. "Yes, Lana, it shows exactly that. Goodbye." Her smile faltered. "What do you mean, goodbye?" "You've shown me your truth, and it isn't love." She stormed out, cursing under her breath, already dialing someone else. Next came Stella. She stood tall, presenting him with a thick folder of strategic investments she'd made on his behalf with the card. "This is proof of my vision, Peter," she said smoothly. "I don't just want to be beside you, I want to build with you." Peter glanced at the numbers. The deals were clever, profitable, but her eyes gleamed with ambition, not care. "Stella," he said quietly, "I respect your drive, but I don't need a partner who sees me as a ladder. I need someone who sees me." Her jaw tightened. She said nothing, but the anger in her eyes was clear as she turned and left. Finally, he called for Mirabelle. She entered hesitantly, her hands clasped, eyes lowered. "Sir, did I do something wrong?" Peter shook his head slowly. "No, Mirabelle, you did everything right." She blinked, startled. He took a deep breath, words tumbling from the heart he had kept locked for so long. "You didn't buy jewels. You didn't chase power. You fed the hungry. You gave medicine to the sick. You put shoes on children's feet. You gave them hope, Mirabelle, and in doing so, you gave me something I never had. Her lips trembled. "What's that, sir?" "A home." Tears pooled in her eyes. "But I'm just a maid." "No," Peter said firmly, stepping closer. "You're the only one who saw me as more than money. The only one who cared enough to give without taking. You're not just a maid, Mirabelle. You're the woman who showed me what love truly looks like." Weeks later, the world buzzed when headlines broke. Tabloids mocked, society gasped. But Peter didn't care. For the first time, he wasn't living for their approval. He was living for himself, and for the quiet woman who had healed him with compassion. The wedding was simple. No grand ballrooms, no celebrity guest lists, just a garden filled with laughter, children from the shelter running barefoot through the grass, their new shoes shining. When Peter slipped the ring onto Mirabelle's finger, his voice was steady. "You shattered my pride," he whispered, "and built me a new life." She smiled, tears streaming down her cheeks. "And you gave me a home I never dreamed I'd have." As they kissed beneath the setting sun, the guests erupted into applause. Peter finally understood his mother's words. Marry a woman who builds, not just a woman who shines. Mirabelle had built more than a life with him. She had built him back, piece by piece. And in her arms, Peter Rafford, the billionaire genius, the tech oracle, the man once hollow, was finally whole.